Hey, welcome to Roundtable number 20 of Dualistic Unity. I am realizing that I'm the only one who ever fucking judges myself. And holy shit, is that hitting hard. Even when I see someone else and feel like they're judging me, it's still not even me that they're seeing. And it's still just my assumptions of myself. And when I feel certain things about certain things that people say, it's only stemming from things I judge myself about. It's never about something that I don't judge myself about, because when someone judges that, I don't even really consider it. I'm like, oh, that's weird. You must have a certain thing that you're holding on to side of yourself. And fucking hey, it's been hitting hard, but it's very freeing as well. So it's exciting to recognize those types of things that we do to ourselves.
It's exciting to hear it being recognized. It's exciting to share that recognition. It's exciting to hear members of our community sharing different shades of that recognition, because that's really all we're going through are various different shades. Where we used to very much rely on a black and white mentality, all of a sudden there is just so much gray. And it's in the gray that we see why we stuck to the black and white. It's the uncertainty of the gray that we've been running from. And so once we accept that, then our eyes widen and we're able to appreciate a greater spectrum in terms of our existence, in terms of our relationships, in terms of our insight. It really is just a matter of getting out of the way and taking responsibility, which is not as bad as it might sound.
So with all that said, I hope you enjoy Roundtable number 20.
And here we are for this week's Roundtable episode. At the moment, we only have three of us here, which is just fine, of course, but we did have two other people who volunteered to join us. They may not join us until a little later, and that's fine as well. It's a roundtable, and considering the news that we just heard from Amanda, I think it's actually kind of appropriate that it starts with us three. So, without any further ado, I'm going to pass it to Andrew first, obviously, because otherwise I'd be rude not to. And then we're going to pass it to Amanda afterwards to let us know what the fuck is going on.
And without further ado, I'm just going to pass it to Amanda because that's way better than anything I'm going to share. So, Amanda, over to you.
All rudeness aside, thank you so much, guys. But so everyone who has been with us kind of knows that we have been working to partner with the Global Consciousness Project, and they have initiated a 2.0 version of their initial project that they started 20 to over 20 years ago. And so we reached out and had a meeting with them, and as of yesterday we were told that we were able to move forward, that we could order one of the random egg generators from their first batch of the newly designed eggs in this 2.0 project. But as of literally like 2 hours ago, they emailed us the actual order form so we can place the order for the actual random egg generator like 2 motherfucking day and have it shipped to Ray by the Vancouver retreat. And so by our next retreat, we'll be able to be contributing to this great scientific endeavor about global consciousness and what that could mean. And I'm just so excited that I thought that the news I was going to share today was just that we could maybe order the egg soon, but like we can actually order the egg like today, like right now I've sent the email to both of you guys, and so you could fill it out right now during this live. We could order it with everyone during the roundtable if we so felt like, but there's no rush because it's only like an hour or two difference. But yeah, that's the news, guys. We are gonna have an egg. There's gonna be a Dualistic Unity egg at with us. Like, oh my God, I can't fucking believe that this happened within the last 24 hours. Like, just fuck around and find out. And we found out. We found out, guys.
Oh, I absolutely believe it. Anybody who's been in the community for a while knows that when Amanda tries to, or when Amanda doesn't try, when Amanda decides she's going to get something done, it pretty much always gets done. And so we really appreciate everything that you've done, Amanda, including originally reaching out to the Global Consciousness Project, which I know was very much just a result of the community groups that we do on Patreon. And as such, I was thinking that what I'll do is I'll likely pay for it during our Patreon group right after this, is I think that would be appropriate, because then we'd have more community members with us, and it would be something that we could share with everybody. And so that's definitely something I'd like to do. I'm going to throw the link up here on the screen. There's a QR code and a link in the chat. If anybody would like to join us for that, after this, we're going to be doing an hour-and-a-half group at 8 p.m. Eastern time, patreon.com/dualistic unity. There is a 7-day free trial right now. If you're not too sure if you're down with all this vulnerable open discussion thing and laughter and all that, that's fine. You can dip your toe in the water, as it were, and just join us for a free 7-day trial. And we do groups 5 days a week. And that trial will give you access to pretty much every one of those days, as well as over 500 hours of exclusive group discussion video that you will not find anywhere else on the internet ever.
Yeah. So even if you're just listening to the podcast and you want some more conversations, maybe you've been through the whole podcast, which is fucking impressive if you've done that and are even caught up. If you want more, there's so much more. Like, there's more on Patreon than there is on the podcast. There's more discussions and there's more insights. Like, we chew through so many insights, and so much of the podcast is a reflection of what's going on in the Patreon groups. Like, a lot of the podcast is like almost like the, I don't know, like finished product of the conversations that we're having on Patreon. Not that there's ever a finished product, it's always in process, but we go through, we go over a lot of insights and share a lot of things. And a lot of the things that we talk about on the podcast are informed by community members on our Patreon calls. So it's, I couldn't think of a better place to be if you're willing to question things, if you're curious about society, if you're, you have certain thoughts and you're just like, I don't know, does any of this seem real? Is there something going on here that's bigger than just what society has settled upon is going on here? We're talking about it all the time. So it's a fantastic spot. And we have the free trial because we know you're going to love it when you check it out. So we're willing to give you a full week, which gets you 5 group chats for free. It gets you all of the other shit, all of the access to everything that's involved. We do the community topic votes even that are going on, that you got probably like a couple hours to get that in. So if you really want to get involved in the community topics vote for that episode that'll be filmed later this week, get in there. There's so much happening on Patreon. That's where all our retreat updates are. That's where all our tickets are shared first. Like, we send them out by tier. We've had retreats sell out within like 14 hours, I think, and it was all just people on Patreon. Like, a lot of our retreats don't get shown to the public because it just doesn't get through Patreon. So it's a fantastic spot. But back to the egg. Amanda, thank you so much for getting that figured out. I know you're not someone who really takes no for an answer, and so I'm glad you're on our side, because it helps a lot with everything that we're trying to do. And this is just another component. It's going to be incredible to see, because every retreat that we've had has been very, very impactful, all in different ways, but all with a fundamental sort of impact and shift, because it's a bunch of me recognizing me and involved with each other. So it would make sense that it'll be reflected in those random number generators, or the egg, or however it does get reflected. So it's going to be a really, really fun tool. The more retreats we go through, the more things we do as a community to just see, I don't know, have some component of a possibility of a measurement of what's going on, and being able to have an organization like that is well respected throughout the world and be involved in that. So I couldn't be more excited for what may be to come with that.
Oh my God. I'm still in a little bit of shock, guys, because like I like just got the email like 2 hours ago. And so I'm like, wait, this is not this actually happened? Like, no, it fucking happened. Like, I tested the link, like the link works. Like, I saw that I could order the egg, and I saw that, you could put more than one. So I was like, shit, do we want to order more than one egg? Like, because that's, but one is a good start. I gotta be cool, I gotta relax, but I'm like, fuck, man, we've got the egg, guys. Like, Oh man, I just I joke, I laugh because fucking Ray's like, oh, you got to be careful talking around Amanda because if you say an idea and she likes it, she'll fucking snatch it up and run with it. But I do cite the source. I always cite the source if somebody else gives me the idea. But just incredible, just absolutely incredible that we're able to do this. And it does provide us with an air of legitimacy working with an organization like that because we are a startup. And so it's just like building a credit score. At first, no credit is worse than bad credit. If they don't know you, they have no idea what to do with you. And so this is definitely going to open up a lot of doors for us. And I'm just so excited to see what happens next. Like, I'm so glad to be here with you guys, and I'm very excited.
Oh yeah, to say the least. For everybody who doesn't actively listen to all of the podcast all of the time, I've mentioned a few times that the Global Consciousness Project is something that's been interesting to me forever, just because there is a connection between the observer and the observed. There is some connection between reality and awareness itself, the phenomenon of awareness itself, and we just don't know how to measure it, to look at it, to quantify it whatsoever. And so this is a way to look at what we would ordinarily see as just randomness and see a larger picture in that. And so it's great to have a chance to be a part of this. I wanted to mention quickly, actually, that Andrew had talked about the fact that most of our retreats sell out quite quickly, and we decided, well, we might as well squeeze one more in. I mean, it'd be great to hang out with people a little bit more before the Netherlands retreat comes up in November, which is going to be the largest community event to date. I just wanted to mention it's going to be near 40 people. That was a giant explosion behind me. If anybody heard that, there's some construction happening in the area. And on time. Don't worry, there will be no explosions in the Netherlands outside of conscious explosions. Anyway, the point is that we have an event coming up July 27th. There's a code in the chat section. There's also a QR code on the screen. Of course, if you are joining us on Patreon, there is also some fucking kick-ass discounts, including $350 off for tier 3, $150 for tier 2, and $50 for tier 1. This is going to be a fun small event. There's going to be 7 guests total, and then just Andrew and myself. We're going to spend some time at the beach. We're going to spend some time in the forest. We're going to spend some time smoking weed. We're going to spend some time with other substances, and it's basically just a time of vulnerability and celebrating existence, and allowing yourself to sit in the moment until it feels like you've been there forever, because you can, and you have, and we all share that with you. And it's magical, to say the least. If anybody's in the chat section who's been to a retreat, I'm sure they'll vouch for that. And if not, check out our community Discord, because people just came back from a retreat, 2 retreats that we did last month. And yeah, it was pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited about the retreats as a whole. So if you can't make it to Vancouver, the Netherlands. And if not, Vancouver for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's only going to be more. Each one is its own fucking incredible experience. And there's lots to do. People have asked, someone asked if they're, wait, we can talk about certain substances on here, right? Or should we steer clear?
We should probably not mention specifically that we would do or not do any of them at any given time in the future. I mean, it's totally different retroactively. I mean, what do we know? I mean, I didn't understand. It happened in the past. I've learned, that kind of thing. But, specifically, like, well, we plan on doing but we will be smoking weed and various things that accompany weed very well. And by that, we mean just, foodstuffs.
Exactly. Yeah. No, they're a blast. And I did, on this sort of topic, there was something that I wanted to discuss with whoever, and I'll probably bring it up on Patreon, but something I want to bring up in regards to substances, especially like weed. So something I've been wondering about, I find kind of interesting, is how people will take, say, a video that I make, like one of my gummy run videos, and they'll write off, despite anyone who listens to the podcast, you guys know we talk about this stuff sober all the time. It's never the substances doing the things, but it's very easy when someone does a certain substance to write it off, any of the thoughts that they have to the substance. Like it's like, oh, he's talking about this stuff. Oh, he's he's just high. And it's not to say that I'm gonna keep doing, you know, gummy runs and stuff like that from time to time, because I find them to be fun. I think they're a good time to do. But a part of me is, I don't want to say it's like a frustration, but it's I butt up against this from time to time, in that there's a side of me that knows, you know, if I mention that at a start of a video, it's going to get people more interested. But at the same time, there's the trade-off of people writing it off as just the substance that you're taking. But also, it's like, it's not to say that the thoughts aren't still there. Like, the conversation is still being had. And so, you know, take my last one, for example, like, went pretty viral on TikTok, got over 2 million views, and like a bunch of people really enjoyed it, appreciated it, whatever. But it was like, a lot of people still write it off as just, oh, he's just high. Oh, he just took a gummy. That's where these thoughts are coming from. And so I've been going back and forth with this, as, and even on top of that, just because I've shared, I'm open about these things. A part of me really wants to break down the stigmas with mushrooms, weed, things like that, and share these things aren't what you think. But like, I've had times where people have come up to me and like recognized me from social media, and they've straight up asked, like, "Are you on mushrooms right now?" Like, just because you see a video like every couple of weeks of me doing something or talking about microdosing, you think I'm just like injecting it in my fucking arm, taking an IV of it at all times? Like, it's fascinating. People will think that and then do this one thing. So it's not to say that I'm going to change necessarily anything that I'm doing, but I find it's like a interesting balance, because with something like that, that a video that does go more viral because it's someone doing something that's abnormal, people are intrigued by that, it's entertaining and everything, it's still at least getting the conversation in front of people, whether they write it off to the drugs or not, because not everyone does that either. A lot of people are like, oh, I've had these thoughts as well, I've been curious about this as well, this is very interesting. Oh, you know, I'm going to check out podcast or whatever, or I'm curious where else this conversation is being had. And so it's like I don't know. This is just something I wanted to talk about and just get your guys' thoughts on it, because again, I'm not like torn by anything, but I'm just recognizing how much, especially on social media, like how people just want to see, like, people are like on Idiocracy, how people want to watch someone get spanked. It's like just dumbass shit that people, and entertainment, that people need something else as opposed to just listening to someone sharing insights. So it's a balance, because it does get in front of more people, but also there's the, I don't want to call it a risk, but risk of people just completely writing it off to the substance.
Well, this really depends on their view in terms of responsibility, because you'll notice that's exactly the split, right? Everybody who's like, nope, the substance is stronger than your will, is painting you out to be an irresponsible person who is promoting, basically a substance that's going to ruin their life. The substance is stronger than you, straight up. And there's this avoidance of the fact that addiction to any of these substances is largely connected to the need to escape. Right. And right there is, in fact, unfortunately, kind of the reason that they don't want to go any further than that, is because they really believe in the system. They really believe in the world the way it is. They don't want to see that there might be a problem that's causing other people in different situations to suffer. Right. Because then we might have to address the whole fucking problem. And we definitely don't want to do that. So I just wanted to throw that in very quickly, that is the big split responsibility. Right. But one more thing very quickly, and I'll pass it to Amanda. It's easy to forget this when you see this inundation of a couple of hundred different comments, understanding that several of those comments are often by the same user. Is you forget all of the hearts, all of the likes that the video has gotten, which are basically comments going nice, without there being a comment saying nice. right? And it really is easy to forget that. Like somebody's like, where are all the comments and support? It's like most people don't leave those. They just go, I liked that. And they move on because they have a fucking life, right? They don't need to self-justify. They don't need to self-validate. They don't need to make a stand here and now. I'm going to die on this one because you're an anonymous stranger on the internet that's threatened my entire existence because you're there. And that's really it. Like it's just total irresponsibility. You're the problem, Andrew, not the fact that I'm just a whiny little bitch.
That's fucking hilarious. Oh my god. But I go out of my way to share positive feedback because I've worked in call centers before where people definitely see you more as or less than human, and they definitely see you as just a representation of the company because there's not a human person standing in front of them. So the things that they say on the phone is things that they would never say to you if you were standing in front of a counter at a register in front of them. And so I definitely never forgot that. And so anytime I call a call center, I always go out of my way. If I get exceptional or even just mediocre service, I'm like, that was great. Thank you so much. Can I talk to your manager? And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, because people go out of their way to give you negative feedback, but they won't go out of their way to give you positive feedback. But that just has more to do with their sense of lack than it does anything to do about the actual quality of service that you gave them. And then when it comes to dealing with just socially accepted drugs versus unaccepted, I used to have this debate with coworkers years ago because I was smoking weed and I would get flack for it. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not asking if Sharon's on Vicodin at her desk and she's clearly falling asleep. She's clearly not sober. So like nobody cares if she's got a prescribed drug that's making her do faulty work. Like you're more worried about my weed smell, and I'm a high performing employee. I kick fucking ass high and sober. You won't keep up. So you kind of want me on weed. You kind of want me to slow down because if not, we're gonna hit the ground running. But I would always make that debate that, the substance is a problem when it's not alcohol, when it's not a prescribed drug, and then the substance is an issue. But weed and all those things that do less damage, just like you were saying in the live, Andrew, it's like they act like the effects are the same, and the effects are definitely not the same. And so, but they're classified like they are the same, and they're treated with the same kind of stigma. And so at a certain point, you have to just kind of decide for yourself, am I going to believe the propaganda? Am I going to believe the hype? Or am I going to, like a scientist, test out the hypothesis? Is this something that actually is super terrible? Or with responsibility, could any substance be somewhat useful? I remember reading an article about a Columbia professor who was microdosing heroin and teaching. And it fucking blew my mind because I was like, heroin? Like, what the fuck, man? Like, a joint can't do it for you. And it's not that, it's just that he found a way to use a substance that worked for him, and it challenged my perception of that drug because I had accepted the stigma for one drug, but I was trying to reject it for weed and for shrooms. But for heroin, I was like, oh no, that story must be true. That shit must be crazy. And it really made me let that go. And so I'm so glad. I mean, I personally am on the same stance. Like I won't personally want to do it myself, but I definitely don't hold my opinion of that drug as the only perception of it. So I just kind of take it as it comes and just put it on myself. Like I've seen functional alcoholics that they're not doing anything illegal, but I almost feel like they should be locked up. At least at one point I did. I was like, they should lock up that motherfucker. He is wilding out. But nobody turns an eye to him or her. They're just like, oh no, they just had a hard day, or they're just dealing with some tough things. And I'm like, yeah, but they're hungover at work. Like they're definitely, and they're gonna go have a drink at lunch, and then they're gonna have another drink after work, and then they're going to just continue this trend, doing something that you say is not a red flag, but all I'm seeing is signs of distress. And so, oh man, it just trips me up.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that. So this is one specific thing that I was kind of going through this morning that got my mind kind of running with this was I'm going to New York to visit some friends and whatnot in a week or so. And so there's a girl who has TikToks and basically does like running interviews. And we've talked before, she lives in New York, and we had talked before about doing one together, and like she wanted me to join her on it, and it gets pretty good engagement. Like all her TikToks get like a few 100,000 views to over a couple million views, and so I was like, oh, that could be fun to take a gummy together. And I don't know, there's a part of me that maybe just like overly thinking about this, but like if say there is, and it's a part of me that I recognize that there's a degree of a desire for control in, the quote unquote outcome, as if I have any perception of how that's going to be based on this video. And I was kind of going back and forth between, oh, should we, it would be fun to take a gummy together on this run and do the interview and that kind of be a component of it. Like obviously the engagement would probably increase if it started out with us doing that and taking that. And then I was thinking, okay, but if we get into say a deeper conversation, we start talking about, maybe she asks about dualistic unity, we start getting into that stuff, there is a hesitancy for me because whether I'm on a ton of drugs or completely sober, I can go deep with these conversations. And the hesitancy for me was that it would be written off as, oh, they took a weed gummy. That's where this conversation is coming from. That is the basis of this conversation, as opposed to it coming from me. And to Ray's point, that's going to be dependent on someone's willingness to take responsibility, which I have no control over. So no matter what, it's still going to be a split. So the decision is kind of irrelevant in a sense, but that's what I was kind of going back and forth with, because I had talked to her, we were going back and forth, and I told her I'm going to be there, and she was like, yeah, let's do it when you're there. And so I initially said, I asked her if she wanted to, and she's in for it. And then a part of me was like, I don't know if I want that to be like to cloud the conversation. And so that's where my questioning sort of came in.
I'll tell you right now. Say hi to Jazz very quickly. But I'll tell you right now. The fact is that if somebody wants to do that, they'll do that regardless. So what I mean is that you could be sober in that conversation, and you start going deep, and they'll go, "Oh, is this because all the cannabis you've been smoking or eating?" So it doesn't even have to be at the time. You know what I'm saying? Like it can be retroactive. If I want to use that against you, I'm going to use that against you. Right? Like I've had people who have said, like, oh yeah, no, psychedelics in my life in my younger years, they really affected my. It's like, oh man, like you have responsibility here and now. Like if we want to pass the buck, we can for ourselves or anyone else. It's not on you. This is why I find it funny now. People don't understand. People don't know if I'm high or not because I always sound like I am.
That's
I agree. It's definitely, it's going to be on her how she perceives you, and you have no control on how that's going to be. And it's so crazy because you could encounter you could encounter the same person and you could be different, and yet they could still take you the same way. You could arrive differently and they could just perceive it as combative or defensive. I mean, think about your interview with the Amanita guest. You guys were completely, in my opinion, from my perspective, just having a conversation, and yet it was perceived by her as being attacked. And you guys, I don't know if you were sober or not, but honestly, I don't think it would have made a difference if you were smoking a joint before or not. If they're walking in with a victim mentality, there is nothing that you can do about that. So I wouldn't take it personally, and I would just go in it and just fuck around and find out. Like,
yeah, I'm with you. And just to clarify, it's not so much her. Like she follows me, and we've talked before, and it's not necessarily her judgment, just people who watch it, because usually there is a good amount of engagement. And so part of it is like, because she'll probably talk about what I do with work, and so part of it is I don't know, like an opportunity to talk about dualistic unity in another way. And so I was just trying to take in all the considerations. But yeah, to both your points, I appreciate it, because it is something I just wanted to talk through, because at the end of the day, you don't know how it's going to be perceived. You don't have control over it. And if people want to see you, like if I do, take the gummy and they want to write it off as that, they're going to find a way to write it off. And those who want to listen to it are going to listen to it regardless of whether or not the video starts out with doing a gummy. So yeah, that definitely helps, and I knew it would be helpful. So I'm glad we were able to publicly discuss all of this. But yeah, Jazz, how you doing? Good to see you. I like your shirt. You are muted. Wait, can I hear?
Cool.
No. There we go.
Okay, there we go. Can you guys hear me now?
There we are. Hello.
Hello, people. Nice to see everyone again. Wow, it's been a while since I've been on a DU call, so hello, people. Yes, the shirt is new, and I figured I'd wear it for the roundtable today. I've been loving walking around the city with it and just looking at people's faces as I walk by. Yeah, it's a nice shirt, but yeah, that's an interesting conversation we've been having about how it's so easy, I think, to take on a perception. It's like, I think maybe the biggest lesson for me since the last retreat is how easy it can be to take a perception and be so afraid of that perception being true that you just like hold on to it, and then you just try to figure out a way to navigate through that perception, like as if it's like the reality, and now you're trying to figure out how that perception is true. And so when it comes to passing off the responsibility to drugs like weed, I think it's so easy to do that when you are so scared and you're so uncomfortable of what someone is saying that you want to find so like you reject it first of all, and then you find a way through that rejection to explain it away. And so some people just use drugs. Some people can, if you've never done drugs from their perception, then they'll just find something else because it's just a way for the mind to come up with some kind of excuse, I think, when you are in that kind of a state.
Yeah, no, spot on. And just for context, Jazz, because I know you missed the start of it, we were just talking about, and I was expressing just how it's interesting when I do a video like that, especially like the last gummy run that I did, and it went viral on TikTok and got a lot of views, and how interesting it is that someone, despite me saying the same things in a video like that as I do on the podcast, as I do sober all the time, people can just write it off to, oh, he's just high. Oh, the crazy high thoughts, like blah, 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 blah. And to Ray and Amanda and your point, people will come up, if they want to come up with an idea, they'll come up with an idea. If they want to come up with an assumption about you, they're going to do it regardless of whether you're smoking weed on the video or doing a gummy, or if you've done it previously. And they'll just say, oh, those thoughts are just coming from all the other drugs that you've always done, as opposed to looking at them, recognizing that, oh, if you were to just take a zoom out a little bit and see like, oh, these do have some validity. Oh, that is a good question. Oh, that is something to wonder about. And those who are willing to look at it that way, whatever you do, whether you do drugs or not, going into it, it's going to be irrelevant to them. So like if they're willing to look at it, the drugs are irrelevant. If they're not willing to look at it, the drugs are irrelevant, is basically what I've come to, which I appreciate very much. But yeah, just to give you a little bit of context on that. And then besides that, Amanda had some incredible news for us at the start of the call as well. So very, very exciting stuff.
Oh, yeah, Jazz. So as of like 2 hours ago, we got approved to order the random egg generator from the Global Consciousness Project 2.0. So it once the order gets placed today, the shipping, it'll arrive by the Vancouver retreat in just a few weeks. So Ray will have our first DU egg, random egg generator. Fuck it, we'll call it anything. It is just magic in a bottle. And we're about to get our genie in a bottle in just a few weeks. And I had just found out yesterday that we were going to get the order form. So I thought, oh, maybe we'll get the form in like a week, but then we got it today. So like we can order it today. So I'm like, fucking mind blown, absolutely mind blown that it all happened so quickly. I thought it was going to take way longer. And we're also one of the first groups that can order the eggs from the first batch of newly designed, ready to plug and play, go random egg generators. So not only is this super exciting because it's just exciting in and of itself, but like we're one of the first people to get in, which I just think is super fucking cool.
That is fucking awesome. That's so exciting. And so we will have it for the Vancouver, like we might have it for the Vancouver retreat then?
Yes, but it has to stay. So there are some requirements that it needs to meet, and so it has to stay plugged in 24/7 into like hardwired Ethernet cable into a modem. And so once it's plugged in, you can't move it, and it needs 24/7 maintenance because it's collecting data, and so it has to generate a report once a month. So that's why it has to stay plugged in with Ray at his home. But once there's an official retreat house property, then you already know that there's going to be an egg that lives at that retreat property. And then, hopefully in a few years, there'll be eggs that are mobile, adventure eggs, I'd like to call them, that can go on the road with us.
Hell yeah, that is awesome. And speaking of, I am so excited that we are making the Vancouver retreat happen. And I'm also about the location, like going on, being able to go to the beach and forest and stuff. Hell yeah, I'm looking forward to that retreat very much. Speaking of, I wanted to get into my retreat experience from the Denver retreats, and because I think it was very interesting, honestly. And honestly, it still is very interesting. Still very much processing it. But the first retreat was pretty chill. The first retreat, I like figured out how my posture is affecting my back problems, and so now I'm just like constantly focused on my posture, which is awesome because my back doesn't hurt as much, and I'm able to do so much of the day now. And so just like it was chill like that. And then the second one, I got so caught up in one perception of feeling rejected and feeling like I'm on the outside of an in group. And I don't know, there was stuff happening before the retreat, and there was stuff happening leading up to the retreat. And so it kind of just came together at the retreat. And I mean, it wasn't all just one perception. Obviously, it was a roller coaster, and it was awesome. I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved it especially because the first retreat that I went to, which was on Vancouver Island, the I don't know, the lesson, the main takeaway felt like what the North Star is like what happens when I don't feel like I am stuck in my thoughts in my head and stuff. And so understanding what that kind of an experience is like, and then bringing that to I don't know at home, and that was an interesting experience. But the experience at Vancouver Island was very like it was easy to feel like you're already part of a family by like day 3, and so it was I feel like very easy to settle into that. But when you are met with thoughts that are not like that, where you are met with perceptions and ideas of what is happening, and especially I think the idea of a quote unquote reunion retreat, because that's what it was, the second retreat. And so for me, without even knowing it, there were expectations of what a reunion means and who I'm reuniting with, all these ideas in my head. And so without even knowing it, it was coming with all of this weight into the second retreat in Denver. And so since then, like since getting lost at the second retreat a few times, I decided to stay in Denver past the second retreat, and which I normally wouldn't have done because honestly, I was like, I just want to go home. I just want to lay in bed, not do anything. I wasn't feeling very energetic, but I was like, even at the last day of the second retreat, I said something along the lines of, I feel like I had a major breakthrough. And I didn't even know what I was feeling. It just felt like the current shifted a lot. It just felt like something big is happening over the whatever time. And that's part of the reason why I stayed in Denver. And I stayed in Denver, and I was realizing how much I was able to enjoy my experience of being by myself when I hadn't felt that kind of an experience before. Because I was thinking about this leading up to the retreats as well, about how much I use my phone. like I will be going through, like on my dock on the bottom of my phone, I have all my social apps, and then I'll go through every fucking social app, and I know there won't be a notification, but I'll still go through them. It'll be like a habit of going through them over and over and just waiting for some kind of socialization to happen. And I've been realizing how much of that is because I feel like there has been this need of feeling like needing attention, because I feel like I am scared when I'm not having attention, and the kind of attention has to be perceived as a positive attention as well. Like someone cares about me, likes me, that kind of stuff. And so I feel like I need to have that kind of perception maintained on me. And I've been realizing how much of this has to do with my childhood, of course. Who would have thunk, right? But I it's just like I did not realize how much of an effect my childhood. I mean, I understood, but it was I didn't realize how deep it went and how deep it honestly still goes. Like I can feel it. I can feel at this point how much weight there still is, and so it's just interesting to see how the kind of attention I didn't receive in childhood and feel like I did need that is coming out now, and how scared I get when I feel like someone doesn't like me or is angry with me or is upset with me or doesn't want to include me. And so then I go into fight or flight mode. It's like I'm feeling unsafe and I feel like I have to change whatever is happening. And I think that's why I was using the social apps a lot, is because I felt like I had to constantly maintain this perception of me. And so a lot of the thoughts that I would have throughout the day have been about that as well, leading up to the retreat. And since the retreat as well, like since the retreat has become so much more fucking obvious how many of these thoughts I have all day, all fucking day. And through the through the next 2 weeks, I was noticing how I was using my phone way less, like way fucking less. But also, I was, of course, getting caught in the idea of how I shouldn't be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing that, or I shouldn't be having the thoughts at all. You know, the progress of judgment of the progress. And so I was just reminding myself of this analogy that I've loved since I heard it one time, about how an ice cube doesn't melt right away. An ice cube is pretty strong and you put it under the sun and it takes time for it to melt. And so I have been noticing how the thoughts that I have, trying to maintain a perception about how the more I think about it, the more it leads into action. And I have followed that process through since the retreat, like looking at it, just being aware of it happening completely without judging, just looking. And then I have been noticing how that happens less and less and less and less. And that's also part of why I haven't been joining the DU calls as much, is because I was noticing how much of what I said was to feel like I'm bringing myself up. And so that's also why I felt like there was this kind of, I don't know, this weight to what I was saying. And so I don't feel that weight anymore, and or as much anymore. I'm sure there's still a shit ton of stuff going on. It's just that the awareness has expanded, and so I'm seeing so much more. And even when I go into like lately, I was noticing that I was going into stores and stuff and super high, and normally I wouldn't be feeling nervous. And so I have completely blocked out that entire perception of me possibly ever feeling nervous, because I'm always super confident. But now I was feeling nervous. I was feeling so much more than I have ever felt before. And it was crazy because I was also thinking about, I was also very aware of what all these things that this person could be thinking of me. And so all of that, I was like processing all of that at the same time. And getting used to that has been so much as well, because I just keep, something that was automatically coming to me is, this is so new to me. Like I'm so new to this. Like whatever is happening is so new. I have never been aware of as much as I'm aware of, I feel like right now. And so it's so easy for me to start judging it. For one, I went through a whole process of judging all this new stuff that was coming up, because I was like, no, this shouldn't be there. But then I was like, of course this should be there. I just repressed it, so that's why I wasn't seeing it before, but now I am seeing it. So of course it's there. It's always been there. And it's not about it not being, about realizing that it doesn't define me, and that it's just one of the millions and millions of considerations that are being added as I process whatever existence is. And honestly, it's been nice. It's been really, really nice to be so much more involved in my experience lately. It's part of why I haven't been joining the DU calls as much, is because I have just been really in my life. Oh, it's been so beautiful, and I notice how things that used to be so much harder for me, like reading a book, because I was so lost in thoughts, is becoming easier and easier. And it's still very fucking hard because I am still like learning. But wow, it's so nice to be. I'm reading this book called Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, and I'm on chapter 3 now, which is already like further than I have gone on any fiction book, which I think it is a fiction. It seems like a fiction book so far. It's not fiction. Holy fuck. But yeah, I've never finished a fiction book before, and I've never even started one, I don't think. And so this has been an interesting experience. And I've also been more learning how to drive. And so it's just nice that I'm not learning how to drive, but I'm just giving the L test, which is the knowledge test, before you can learn how to drive. And so I am just appreciating how much less time I'm spending trying to maintain a perception of me and just being me.
I am also appreciating it. It's nice to see you. And
It's nice to see you, too.
Yeah, this is what we're always talking about in terms of being an exposed nerve, of just, letting down your walls and realizing how long ago you built them, and why, without judgment. Without judgment. It's not even about judging the processes. It's whatever got you here, right? And that's how you have to take it. It's like, fuck, I didn't have any goddamn tools. This is the best I could do. I've covered myself in a big fucking thick rubber suit, and then I'm wondering why I can't feel anything, right? And so it's just a matter of going, right, I did that for a reason. And now I see the reason, and now I'm going to do something else. And it doesn't mean anything about me that I'm changing. It doesn't mean anything about me at all, except that I can change. And I think that's beautiful. And so I'm so very excited to see you at the Vancouver mini retreat.
Yeah, that was beautifully said, Jazz. I appreciate you sharing all of that with us, because fuck, I resonate with a lot. It's funny how many people at that retreat, as much as we translated it through our own experienced something quite similar. I've talked with a number of other people who were at, especially that last weekend in Denver, and a lot of people went through a lot of things that they didn't think were still there. And I know firsthand over the last couple of weeks, it's uncomfortable to start seeing some of the shit that's under there, but you don't have to have the concern on top of it. And you do have understandings now that you didn't have when those walls were built. And so it's still something you can handle. And the funniest part is you handled it before. It was just in a way that had a lot of consequences that came along with it, as opposed to now you're almost able to rehandle it, which doesn't make it not uncomfortable. Is that right? Yeah. Double negative, whatever. And you know what I mean? It doesn't make it not uncomfortable, but it does allow you to shake some of the habits that were built over all of those years since the initial response was built, which we have so many initial responses to things that we came up with when we were children. We were very young, and we had a very, very, very limited perspective of reality, a very, very limited understanding of why someone does something to us, why someone reacts in a way that they react. We don't know any better when we're young, so we think that their response is just as valid as any other response. Oh, it must mean something about me. It has to mean something about me because I can't understand that it's coming from them. I can't understand that they're just dealing with a fuckload of shit that they never processed, like you're going through now, that I'm going through now, that you're starting to see it from a different perspective, and that allows it to be let go of, and then the cycle doesn't have to continue. But if you aren't willing to relook at those things, you think it still does mean something about you. Even if you can recognize now that it never did, there were still all of those responses built on top of it. So there's kind of like a etched in response. Oh, it must mean something about me. And it's not even something you can shake until you look at it, until you kind of re-experience those feelings, those things. Like, I came back from the retreat so shaken. I was like getting nervous talking to like one of my mom's friends as they were like in our house upstairs. I was like, why the fuck is my heart racing? I've talked to this woman like a million times in my life in my own house. Like, what is happening right now? But it's just because I was so shaken that I'm like re-experiencing these things and able to come at it from a different point of view, because that was an experience that I went through when I was much younger, and I found out ways to just kind of suppress those feelings as opposed to feel my way through them, understand that it doesn't mean anything, because there weren't the overlaid thoughts on top of them. It was just like, why is my heart pounding right now? Having those basic human interactions. And a component of that is so I can understand what it's like for someone to go through that experience and then reassess it and understand that, oh, this never had anything to do with me. Right? My response to these feelings initially came from a certain situation that didn't have anything to do with my value whatsoever. And so you see things from a different point of view, and then it's like you're I was going to say building on top of the recognition that you had when you were younger in a different way, but it's almost like you don't have to build on top of it anymore, because the things that we built on top of it, the responses, the trauma responses is essentially what they are, get built upon on top of each other, and they're because we think we have to suppress the feelings, the things that come up, as opposed to recognizing that we don't, that we can just feel those feelings. And it's like, at what point do you let go of the concern about what you're going through? Like, I just an example that I went through recently. Last night I got really, really high. Like I smoked way more than I had in a while. And it hit me how I have this concern and I have this thought, because I'm with people who aren't high. And there was a part of me that really wanted to say, like, I'm really baked right now, because that's kind of a response that I use in order to mitigate those feelings. But I was like, fuck that. I'm just going to be high and respond and work through kind of these assumptions that I have where I have to tell someone because I don't feel comfortable in being that way. And so it hit me that, oh, wherever my concern is, if I'm concerned about this, I don't have to be concerned about being concerned about this. And it's like, at what point can you drop that concern? And that's really what hit me, was that I can be concerned about something, but if I'm not concerned about being concerned, then it's not the same sort of weight. It's like, even if I'm concerned about being concerned about being concerned, if I'm not concerned about that, there's a little bit less weight. And then it kind of like is a domino effect that all of those other concerns drop, because it's what you're experiencing here and now, no matter what was built upon that. If you're not so concerned with whatever response you have, whatever feelings you're feeling inside of you, whatever, face someone makes towards you or whatever someone says, it's like, at what point you can drop that concern, it kind of all goes away at once. And so it's exciting to hear that you're going through it, and just be aware I'm going through it too. And pretty much everyone is, to some degree of between the spectrum of suppressing those feelings or feeling those feelings and being willing to drop that degree of concern that they built a lot of responses on top of the initial concern, because they think it had something to do with them and their value.
Now, I'm going to pass it to Amanda in just a quick second, but I wanted to mention, as there was a question on the screen, that we've been kind of addressing in a roundabout way regarding dealing with past trauma and relaxing now into what we would consider flow state. There's a bunch of concepts that get in the way, even with saying any of that. And so this conversation is really quite nuanced. There's a lot to it. So my recommendation would be to listen to the podcast if you can. Check out community topics. I don't remember which number it is, but it's Ray's Holy Trinity. And basically it's just about what I use to kind of unpack all of the trauma as it continued to process in my day-to-day life. So as thoughts would come up, I would identify their root and identify why I was committed to them having value in my day-to-day life at all. Like that's because that is the only reason that we get stuck on these traumatic memories, is because we think we have to. Right. And a large part of that is because we think they define us. And so there's a whole process of kind of changing our perception of that in order to let ourselves feel more space and more freedom in order to process things a little easier. And then all of a sudden we recognize we have more strength as a result of doing so. And it's this slow thing that kind of rolls over. And so we talk about this a lot. It's community topics number 9. Thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate your, thank you, Andrew, for letting me know. It's community topics number 9. Do check it out. But aside from that, my best recommendation is to jump into one of our group calls on Patreon, because we can talk to you about all this. It's really the best way. And you can talk to other members of the community that aren't Andrew and myself, like Jazz, like Amanda, like a number of other people who have been here on the roundtables before, because we're all in exactly that. All of our quote unquote trauma might be different, but there are certainly similarities in terms of how it affected us and how we can deal with it and what it means and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, you're in the right place. We're all going through this together, but we know it's going to be okay. I think that's the underlying lesson behind all of this, is that you're going to get through. It's not always going to feel like that, but that's the reason, it's important to remind yourself that you don't know. You don't know. If you're like, I'm not going to make it, you don't know. Just keep going. So far, you've been wrong because you're still here. Amanda.
And you never will. You never will know. You never did know, and you still figured it out. You still made it this far. And so fuck it. Fuck not knowing. It's never been required. It's never been a requirement to know. I mean, because shit, if that was the case, I don't know how I'm still here, because I still don't know a damn thing. But that's why I love that fuck around and find out philosophy. It's just go for it anyways. I'm only running on like educated guesses, and half of them are not educated. It's just guessing anyways. But I had raised my hand initially because I really resonated with what Jazz said, and it's hilarious that she's not here for me to share my appreciation with her. But that's all right. That's all right. I'll put it on hold, and when she does get back, oh, there she is. No, but I was just appreciating, everything that you were saying, Jazz, because it really reminded me of my, oh, you are, okay, cool. All right, I didn't want to assume, assuming makes an ass out of you and me, as they say. But it reminded me of the trip that I had at the first retreat, where I remember saying to Ray, like, I feel like there's a wall. And what hit me months later is that I am every single wall I've ever felt. And I only built those walls because of the perception that I needed to be that wall, because I had this perception that I needed to protect myself from everyone else, because I had felt vulnerable, and I had felt weak, and I had felt like that vulnerability was something to be avoided, and it was something that was perceived to be negative, because you wanted to be a strong and intelligent and independent, and you didn't want to rely on people, and only weak people rely on others, and all of that is just hiding all the insecurities that you try to have a perception that you don't have insecurities, but you always do. You always have those anxieties. And so when I finally admitted that I've been every scary wall that I built, because I wanted that wall to make people leave or not stay versus having them abandon me or neglect me. I'd rather push you away than watch you walk away willingly. So my walls were designed to be very scary, to make you think that I never needed you, that I never needed anyone, that I could do everything by myself, because I'd rather have almost like a voluntary loneliness. I almost preferred a voluntary isolation than an involuntary abandonment from someone else. And once I admitted that I was all of those walls, they all kind of dropped, but they didn't disappear. And the analogy I like to use is that the walls dropping felt like leaves falling off of a tree at the end of autumn, but the leaves don't disappear. The leaves just break down further and become nutrients for further growth. And so that's the way that I like to view the dropping of the walls, is They don't disappear. They're just moving to facilitate space for further growth. And so I very much appreciate all of the walls that I did build because I understand the reason behind them. And I appreciate that I don't need to hold on to those reasons anymore, that I don't need a reason to not be vulnerable and I don't need a reason to be vulnerable. I'm going to experience both, and the pendulum will swing, and I will feel both secure and I will feel insecure all over again. But that is the process, and I'm here for the full package deal. And so you are going to see me look like I have it together, and then you're going to see me look like a hot mess. And I'm totally okay with that because I don't need to hold on the perception that I need to look or be or act perfect. I just need to be whatever I'm going to be in whatever situation I'm in, and that's going to change. So just relax, and which reminded me of an insight that I had yesterday about rejection. So you know how Jazz, you're talking about rejection and feeling that. So I felt it on the other end of the spectrum, where it was that I wasn't afraid of people leaving because I was so I had like flashbacks of all the ways that I would try to hold on to people, whether that was friends, family, partners, anything. And I would hold on. And the way that I would hold on is by trying to be the best version that would make you want to stay. And what I realized yesterday was that for the people and the situations that want to be in your life, you never have to hold on to them because they will want to stay. And because they want to stay, they don't need to be held there. And so I never have to hold on to people or situations that I think I need or think that I want, because the things that work, the things that fit my life or where I'm at are just naturally going to be there. And I don't have to reach out and I don't have to hold tight ever again. But it was really powerful to feel that realization that I don't need to hold on to things or people at all, ever. I just don't. And I cried like happy tears because it was so beautiful to realize that all that holding that I thought was necessary just never was, you know? And so it's been really a powerful series of insights since the last retreat.
Yeah, it really helps to remember that, in not holding on to people, you're giving them the chance to choose to be there. Right? And the same goes both ways. Jess.
Yeah, that was incredible. Thank you for sharing, everyone, honestly. Um, yeah, I've been following some of the episodes, Andrew, and I honestly loved listening to your journey as well after the retreat, because it reflected so much of what was happening with me as well. And something I'm realizing is that it always does. Like it's always like because I'm taking away what I need to take away from whatever is happening. And so I have been realizing how much it has been me doing the work. Like it always has been. And like it's funny how I've also always tried to pass off the responsibility and stuff, but I'm realizing that it literally is just me. So who else? But yeah, and I also appreciated what you shared, Amanda, as well, because I have been feeling a lot lately how, like, at the last retreat I was, and since the last retreat as well, I was noticing so many judgments about how much I'm feeling, and those were so, like, I saw where it was coming from, and it's because I was being exposed to so much that it felt like I was repressing before. So then it was like, why are you here? I thought I put you away. But it is there. And so and I forgot what I was gonna say.
No worries.
Huh.
I can take it for a bit, and if you remember, but yeah, fuck. I'm hearing everything everyone's saying so clear. The other thing that hit me last night when I was quite high was I was pretty uncomfortable, and I kind of re-experienced like some of those things that I like went through on my last trip at the last retreat, of like some of my deeper sort of traumatic type experiences. And holy fuck, it hit me so clearly because I went back through them, like I felt them again, and I realized that in those situations there's like a few that have stayed with me for a while, no one outwardly judged me going through them. It was all me judging myself. Like, oh my fucking God. It was unbelievable. Like, this whole time, my whole life, it was just me judging myself, and whether and I understand that people have situations where people do outwardly judge them, but this is just in my experience, like, it was never anyone else. Obviously, it's like, you can recognize there isn't anyone else, but like, it was just Andrew judging Andrew. Like, it was just me judging me through all of them. It was me making assumptions of how people were responding because I was setting a bar for myself. I was thinking that it wasn't enough for me to act in this way or respond in this way or do this thing. It was just me. Like, there have been a couple times where, people make comments, people make judgments, whatever, but the ones that stuck were just me. They were just me making an assumption, and it hit me, and I was like, holy fuck. And I kept kind of digging in and like going through, and I was like, there's no fucking way that this stuck in the way that it did. And it was just me judging myself the whole time. And that's what it's always been. And everything that I go through is that. And you can say that about even the situations in which people do seem to judge you. And it's like we take the subtlest facial expression or movement or response in any way, shape, or form and just make this assumption because we assume this about ourselves. We maintain this idea. And I went back through and I was like, holy fuck, no one even like said anything outwardly. It was just me. I was like, and so then it hit me like, what if I just stopped judging myself? What if I just stopped thinking that I have to live up to a fucking bar inside of my head? Like, what if I stopped? Because I was the only one doing it the entire fucking time, and I had never seen it in that way. And it was like, what the fuck? There's, of course, the side that's like, you spent this whole time getting caught up in this shit, and there's still the the impacts and whatnot, but that, like, that insight has never hit me before yesterday, that the whole time that I was so concerned, it was the judgment was only ever existing in potential. The fear of the potential is what handcuffed me, is what hindered me, is what caused me to not want to express myself just because of the thought. And maybe there's something deeper that I haven't gotten to quite yet that led to having such an overarching concern for that. But the experiences that I remember, at least right now, was just me. It was just me judging myself. And I was like, holy fucking shit. Oh my God. It's unreal.
Yeah. Well, and then when you take anybody that actually was like judging you, is coming from a place where they're judging themselves. They're trying to feel better about their own self-judgment. So they're basically projecting it onto you. And the only reason you give a fuck is because it's something that you judge yourself for. Because if I were to say, Andrew, you are the ugliest beaver I've ever met, you wouldn't give a shit because that's not something you judge yourself. How do I appear to the other beavers in the world? Like, it's not something you care about. But if I was to say something that you do worry about, then you would be like, oh, that's important. Oh my God. And it's only because you've decided that's the case. That's it. And then what I love is the loop, especially in high school or in teenage life, where somebody looks at you and you're like, fuck, they're judging me. And you don't recognize that they just did the same thing because you looked at them. And so you're both sitting there going, fuck, I'm being judged by someone who's thinking about themselves. It happens all the time. Jazz.
Hello, I'm back. And yeah, I find it's so often the case that I am interacting with myself when I'm interacting with other people. Like, I'm interacting and seeing perceptions in my head of what the other person is saying or what the other person is thinking, and it's never reality. It's never what they're actually saying. And the more I have been realizing that, and the more I've been letting go of that, I'm noticing that more responsibly I'm acting. Like the word that really feels appropriate lately has been responsibility for my experience, because it lately feels like I am entirely responsible, completely, for what is happening. And and it's whether it's like a perception that I'm maintaining during a conversation of what the other person is thinking behind what they're saying, or how they're feeling about me when I can't even see them, and like it's so many different perceptions. And this process, this deepening, has I've been feeling it very a lot for at least a year, because like a year ago I was I don't know, getting high with my brother, and I was we were hanging out and we were having a great time, and then he left because he wasn't feeling well from the weed. And then I started feeling a pit in my stomach, and I just like laid on my sofa and I was just completely taken out, and I had no idea why. No idea why. And since then I have like since that time with my brother, I noticed how it was because I felt like I got stuck in a perception where he didn't care about me, when in reality it had nothing to do with me. It was just whatever he was going through. But it did feel like I was rejected and feeling like I don't matter, and that I felt like I had these expectations that we would hang out together and all that stuff. So I was like, at the time that it was happening, I was just like, holy shit, the nausea I'm feeling from this weed is crazy. But like now I have so much more awareness into what was happening, because I have formed so many more experiences since then, by maintaining awareness and paying attention to to the experience I'm having as I went through my experience. And since then, so it feels like it kind of feels like there's a puzzle, and then you find like different puzzle pieces, and then it starts to make a little bit more sense, a little bit more sense. And so when you start out with one piece, or like a few pieces, then you only have a small part of the picture. And so when you're acting out of that small picture that you have an understanding of, there's still a lot of weight that comes with it. But the more that you understand and gain awareness, and the more puzzle pieces you are able to get to form the picture, you're understanding more and more about what kind of influences are affecting your ability to act in the current moment, and how many influences that are honestly undercutting your ability to actually respond by having not just one perception, but like it really feels like you are able to have so many more considerations at the same time when you're acting, when you're not necessarily acting from just one perception. Like you get stuck in one perception and then you're acting from that one perception, and so you take that to be the truth. And so a lot of different considerations go out the fucking window, because you're just so maintaining that to be the reality. But when you don't take that to be the truth, and you are paying more attention, and you're able to, because you understand how many of the influencing you do influence you. And so the more I've been realizing lately that like me getting caught in this perception is influencing me in this way, the more I have been not attaching myself as much to that perception. And so the more I have, the more awareness and responsibility I think I have to act in any moment. And so I'm realizing actually how many different decisions I'm taking because of that. And it's interesting to see how some people I don't know, I think that I'm upset with them now, or like not upset with them necessarily, but just upset, like I'm not having a good time or something. But it's just because I'm not pandering as much, not trying to boost myself up, or other people up so that they boost me up, or like be with me, like spend time with me. And it's just because I don't know, can act more honestly. And so it's been nice to have that kind of freedom in whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm saying. And I'm noticing how there is um, so much more of a learning to this, because I am noticing how there will be more situations now, for example, where other people, like normally I'm fine to talk with people however long they want, but now it's like, okay, now I kind of want to just spend time with myself. So if you don't mind, bye. But I noticed last night how I was feeling this, and I kind of made some gestures, but it didn't like the other person didn't understand that I was trying to get away from them, and so it became like a verbal thing that I would have to do to be like, okay, I kind of want to just part ways, um, but I didn't, and so it is interesting because this is something that I'm learning now because it's not something that I've had to deal with before, and so now that I am through these um quote unquote challenges of having to speak my fucking mind, I am being open to these situations more where I would say something that I haven't said before because I'm feeling different things now and my priorities are changing. And so it is it is a learning process, and it's something I've been learning for a year since that time with my brother. And the more puzzle pieces I get, the more, I wouldn't say clear the picture becomes, because honestly, it still feels like I am more and more uncertain of what the fuck is happening. So it doesn't feel like there is a clearer picture now, but it does feel like I am more aware of how many things there were that were taking me in a direction, whether it be about whether I want to hang out with someone or how I'm dressing as well. Like I'm noticing with dressing and with hair and with so many different things, how much of a straight line there felt like there was, and how much of a zigzaggy and sometimes not even in the same direction, like going in a completely different direction. And it's fun to see how much more freedom there can be when you have awareness of all these influences.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pass it to Amanda after this, but I just wanted to mention very quickly that it really does remind me about the difference between quantum computer and your typical CPU, right? Your typical CPU processes things in a linear fashion, right? From here to here to here. Whereas quantum computers look at all of the answers that are possible and choose the most probable. So they're sitting amongst all of the potential answers that could possibly be, and they choose one based on probability. And that's very much what we're doing moment to moment to moment. But because we see ourselves on a linear trajectory based on our idea of ourselves, we only see it from one thing to the next thing to the next. We only see the perception that makes sense according to the perception we're attached to. So that was beautifully said. And now I'm going to pass it to Amanda.
Sorry, I got to put my ice pack down because I'm surviving the heat of living in an apartment with no AC and windows that you have to crank open. You can't actually open the window to like pop in the window fan that's sitting on a hamper. But that's all right. That's all right. We will survive. We will make it. But I was thinking about discovering transcendence and how it talks about the habit loop that never stops. And so you have a trigger, and then the trigger has a response, and the response then leads to a reward. And so that never stops. And so it's just a matter of being aware that your brain is a habit. It's a habit machine, and it's always responding to triggers. And then if you don't notice, it's just like you just think that it's just a reaction, like a reflex, like you hit the knee and and the reflex is not something that you think about. It's an automatic response. But if you know that, then you can be more mindful that of your triggers when you have that awareness to pay attention to them. And so I had noticed an insecurity popping up for me that was like, oh, make sure you explain yourself so that you don't push people away, so that you don't seem dismissive. Oh, so that you don't seem like you're not paying that social currency of ego cookies and feeding someone ego cookies to make them feel better, to pay them to stay around, or to pay them to be happy with you, or to just to pay that social currency. But once you jump out of that social currency economy, people start to notice, and they're like, hey, wait a second, I'm looking at my spreadsheet and I haven't received my deposit from you lately. Like, what's going on, Jazz? My bank account is my social checking account is looking a little low. What's going on? And but at the same time, it's like, I don't have to, and so that made me think of Christmas gifts. And I had gotten feedback from family members that they didn't like my gifts and that they wanted me to ask them what they wanted so I could buy them what they wanted so that they could like the gifts. And that was what they were saying was going to be the requirement. And I just said, I don't have to, right? Like you know that, right? Like, I'm not your mother. You're not a baby. You don't still believe in Santa. Last time I checked, I didn't have a fucking red suit on, and I wasn't saying I was Mr. or Mrs. Santa Claus. So I don't have to buy you anything. I thought what we had was a relationship. But if that's not important to you, let me fucking know, because then I can save time, money, and effort. And I could be on my very little way. Because if you haven't noticed, I've been living kind of on my own without you, every day of my life. But what was I thinking? I'm here to serve you. I fucked up. My bad, everybody. But just saying that outright to my family member, like, I don't have to do this, right? Like, it's completely voluntary. And so either you want a relationship and a connection with me, or you're looking for me to be a living catalog for you. And I don't want to be a living catalog for you. So if that's your requirement, offer rejected. Thank you so much. But if you'd like to renegotiate, please bring something to the table.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that continue to play out. And I guess that's something, because when you recognize the responsibility that you have for your own experience, like, people are as much habit making machines as our own brains are, and they'll use you. And like, if we, for example, with a family or a friend, continue to validate certain behavior, they then make the assumption that you're always going to be there. And so it's always important to remind them, or recognize that this isn't a new baseline. Just because I'm helping you right now doesn't mean that. Yeah, and I'm not like trying to call you. I'm literally just thinking of an example inside of my head that I'm going through. So it just happens to overlap, just how we can get caught in thinking that people are going to, they see us in a certain way, and then they assume that we're always going to be there in that way. And so it's almost like a new baseline is created, and it's like our responsibility, but it's not. It's still their responsibility to recognize what's happening, but we can be components of that. And so, for example, if you do have a family member that you're helping, like, and this is an example that I've talked about, it just sounds like almost exactly like Amanda's, that you're helping for a number of weeks, and you're being super supportive of them and helping them out, and doing things for them. Say maybe they recently had a surgery or something, and you're being really nice, and then, like, they start feeling better, they start being able to do things on their own, and you're like, "Oh, I don't have to help you anymore." But there can be like a transition period between that, because they've gotten very used to that type of behavior, that type of response, that type of coddling. So they've created a sort of habit, and you've now become a component of their environment where, oh, this isn't just a family member anymore. This is someone who is supporting me at all times, no matter what, despite it not being the case, despite you still being almost like going above the baseline of everyone responsible for themselves. You're adding to that experience. But then for them, because they start seeing that in whatever way they're seeing that, instead of them seeing you in the same way as you're seeing it, where you're going above and beyond, they're seeing that as baseline now. And if you go back down to baseline, being responsible for yourself, they feel this sort of disconnect, like, oh, you're not being as supportive of me anymore. It's like, no, I was going above and beyond because you needed extra support. But now you can use all of your limbs, you can walk around totally fine. Like, I don't have to cook dinner for you every single night anymore. You can start chipping away and chipping in, and cooking some dinners. But similar to the way that we create habits for ourselves and make assumptions, and then just kind of like build upon those assumptions, people can do the same for other people. They make the assumption that because you're there at one point, you're going to be there at another point, or because you're there at a number of points over and over and over and over and over, they don't even consider the fact that you're going above and beyond still for them, that you're being extra supportive, because that's just become their new normal. It's the same way we see it with, people who start making more and more and more money, and needing sort of external validation or external things in order to be satisfied. They get say they get a nice car like a BMW, and then it's like that becomes their baseline, and then they now that that's their baseline, in order to feel that same degree of the external validation, they need a fucking Ferrari now. And so to continue on that process, because there's the gap in the support with other people, or in response to other people, in relation to other people, they almost continue needing more, or that becomes their baseline. So you going above and beyond is actually going above and beyond, going above and beyond. And so their baseline, we can be a component of that. But regardless of how long that lasts, it's still not on you. It's still on them. But there, it can help to recognize that that can be a response to certain behavior, that as much as our brain does that, other people do that in essentially the same exact way, and they start to see you in a specific way. So as that goes back to fucking regular baseline, everyone's responsible for themselves, there can be a feeling, because in their mind they've created a new baseline, that you're now below baseline despite being at baseline. And so that's vital for them, because it's still not your responsibility to like spell this all out for them and give them a fucking PowerPoint and diagram and be like, I've been supporting you in this way for a very long time, and now I'm back at baseline. It doesn't mean I'm not supporting you anymore, or I'm like halfway from where I was. Doesn't mean I'm cutting back on my support. It's just that I'm recognizing what's happening and understanding that some of this is actually hindering your own growth, and you're using this. And in my example that I'm thinking of, and I know everyone is probably taking it in their own way right now, that I am being used as a crutch. And for me, it just happened to be a literal crutch with the person I was interacting with. And as you take that crutch away, they have to learn to walk on their own again, because they've relied upon that crutch for a very long time. But yeah, it's not to say that anyone's doing anything wrong, but it can be helpful to keep in mind that we see others as a very similar, in a similar way as we can oftentimes see our brain seeing us when with those habits being created and whatnot.
I find it also helps to kind of remember that there isn't a single person alive that hasn't leaned too much on someone else at some point. And you know, it's not like the opportunity to recognize that wasn't there, and we didn't always take it. In fact, it took us a long time to understand what it meant to take responsibility, right? And so the same is true with the people that we're dealing with, and in relationships it can be tricky, because you can do the right things, as Andrew and Jazz and everybody have been saying, that you can give a little and then hold back a little, giving them the opportunity to learn. It's really important that you do that, but it doesn't matter how well you do that. It doesn't matter if you do everything right. That does not mean that that person's going to take the opportunity. And it's not a one-time thing. It is a series of decisions, one after the other, towards or away from responsibility, that will eventually either take root as their trajectory or not. And that has nothing to do with you or what you're offering in the environment. All you're offering is opportunity, because anything else that enters your mind is you taking away their capacity for the same free will that you value in yourself. And that can be tricky, right? To remember that we all lean sometimes, and sometimes it takes us a little too long to recognize that we've been leaning, and then the person has to pull away, and that's the only way we learn. And sometimes the only thing you can do is just allow your lives to separate you. Allow that person to feel the regret of leaning too long, so they can recognize when they're unbalanced and find that balance again. It's just never pleasant. Amanda.
And it's interesting because it's not just leaning on people, but leaning on ideas. Because when I think back to my childhood, I think about all the people who left, and I think about how much I fucking hated that feeling. And so in order to try to protect myself, I leaned away from people, and I leaned on my ideas. I leaned on my perceptions, because I thought that was a better bet than leaning on people that could walk away. But you know what won't walk away are my ideas, my precious, precious ideas, and my precious, precious thoughts. Oh my God. And it's just fucking hilarious. When I think about the quote, you teach people how to treat you. And I think that's so funny because you can be someone's trigger, you can be their trigger response, you can be their reward, you can be a combination of those things. You can hop from each one of those things, and there's really nothing that you can do about that. But you can let go that people can be predictable, that you could know someone. And so when I hear someone saying like, I don't even know you anymore, and it's like, you never fucking knew me, man. You only knew what you wanted to see. You only knew what your idea of me was and how I fit into your fill in the blank equation of, if I have this, then I'll be happy. And so I was just supporting your if then equation, and that's all I was really doing, because you never took the time to see me. And I can't fault you for doing that, because when did I really do that? When did I really see me? When did I see behind the ideas? And I didn't, because I was just trying to lean on that idea as a false certainty to hold on to. And it's just hilarious that nonstop all I'm doing is either making or breaking habits. And that's not a bad thing. So when I see the habit, it's like, oh yeah, there I go. That's me again. I'm getting caught up, or oh yep, that's my trigger, or that's the way that I perceived it to be. and and then I just allow myself to acknowledge it, and then I breathe. And then just breathing and just sitting in it just helps it let go. And then there's no longer this desire that, there's just good ideas and bad ideas, or good habits and bad habits. It's like, no, there are just habits, there are just processes, because I am all of that, and I don't need to create a problem where there isn't one. And I don't need to view a process or a habit as something negative. It's just a part of the way that I experience my day to day, and that's going to change, because as I change, my habits will change. And it still doesn't put them in good or negative categories. It's just a part of the deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, very much like belief. That's the entire thing. It's like habit has a benefit and a consequence. Belief has a benefit and a consequence, but everybody goes into it like it's all benefit. I don't want to look at the consequence because I'm really invested in this benefit. And we do that all the time, right? But it really is. It's just recognizing that your mind has a push and a pull to everything you do, right? Everything you invest in is going to have a cost in one way or another. Everything is a trade. And as long as you're aware of that, you can choose what that trade is from time to time, right? But otherwise, you're just getting pulled into the current of duality, going back and forth, not recognizing that everything you do out of fear is reinforcing that fear, and everything that you do out of confidence is unfortunately making you a little bit more afraid of losing that confidence, right? Like there's always a teeter-totter to everything, right? And you have to recognize that it's always there. You're never going to escape it. Like most of us just want to find one side where it's all good, right? There's no doubt, there's no darkness, there's no fear, there's no pain, there's no judgment, there's none of that. It's like, no, like, because if you ever get there, you're going to be afraid to lose it. You're going to be afraid to leave it. You're going to be afraid that somebody can take it from you, right? That need for that light place is what creates the fucking darkness. Whereas if you can just recognize that they're both perceptions, that you can just sit in the middle and not need any of them, all of a sudden you go to a totally different perception where it's not about light and darkness anymore. Now it's about whether or not you're being open or restricted. And that's a very different feeling. That's a very different journey. It's not about trying to be good. It's not about trying to be anything. In fact, the whole spectrum all of a sudden becomes whether or not you are being yourself to a greater or lesser degree. And that's it.
Yeah, and we see that so often. It's so funny how we strive for just good stuff, good feelings, comfort all the time. And yet I've heard this expressed so many times. I've experienced this plenty of times where you get to that spot and immediately the fear kicks in. Immediately, it's the concern about how long it's going to last. How long am I going to be in this spot? Oh gosh, I got to hold on to this feeling of freedom, this clarity, and it all stems from our fear of the other end of the spectrum. It all stems from the fear of that. So fucking A, we can't even appreciate those experiences when we go through them. When we go through, like, we can't even fully enjoy and be there in it, because there's the concern of it ending, because it's always in that conceptual spot. As long as we're in that conceptual spot, it's always going to be that. There's always going to be the concern for what might happen. Oh, what if I let this go? What if I forget this thing? But if if you let go of the fear of going through any of that other stuff, then you can actually appreciate the times when they are great. And it's fascinating how we can do that, and yet we keep striving for one side of it, essentially resisting every situation that we go through, be it out of desire or out of fear. If we're in the shit, we're desiring to be out of it. If we're not in the shit, we're fearing being out of it. Like, it's incredible that we continue to do that. And we think that, oh, it's just that, oh, it's so simple. Just get to comfort, get to good, get to happy, get to these feelings and maintain them forever. And then I'll be good. But there's always the potential for the fear of losing it, no matter what you're going through. There's always the potential for the fear. So it goes back to that. I think it's the Bruce Lee quote, like, don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to handle a hard one. And that's just it, because it's not about the situation that you're going through. It's not about how comfortable or uncomfortable the feelings that you're feeling are. It's about your concern about them. Can you handle them? You're bigger than any of the experiences that you go through, any of the feelings that you feel. They're stemming from you. They're not happening to you. They're not overpowering and being thrown at you from somewhere else. They're stemming from yourself. So what are you afraid of? Yourself?
Exactly. And that's that level of responsibility that unfortunately takes a while to get to. Because had I said, what are you afraid of? Yourself in episode 1, it wouldn't have made any sense. It really is just a matter of picking apart the layers that ultimately are the reason you think that you're divided. That's it. And as you get rid of them, all of a sudden it becomes way more obvious that the only thing you've ever been experiencing is yourself and your perceptions of what you're experiencing, which is yourself. Like, you're not experiencing the world, you're experiencing yourself experiencing the world. It's really important to recognize that there is a difference there as a result of perception. Perception changes things. It creates a filter, right? And so it's really embracing the uncertainty and allowing yourself to see more and more and more of exactly how much you are processing and are process. And so I just threw up a link on the screen, a QR code, and a link in the chat, of course, for our movie review of The Peaceful Warrior, which came out in 2006. This movie's fucking awesome. It's really good. If you get a chance to watch it, I highly recommend it. There are a lot of points in there about embracing the unknown, about the suffering that goes with thinking that you have control, the need that goes, the pressure that goes, and how often we get lost in chasing the carrot or running from the stick. And the stick is only the perception that we lack value. The carrot is the offer of value. And the only reason the carrot or the stick exists is because we fucking made them. And we continue to make them. We project a carrot and we look back and, oh, there's a stick. Well, why? Well, because we keep putting it back there. Actually, that'd be a good cartoon. Have somebody holding a stick in front of them with a carrot on it, have a stick behind them just whacking themselves in the back of the ass or something like that. They're like chasing the carrot and running from themselves, doing the whole thing. Because that's really what it is. But we don't recognize that, right? Because we're too busy thinking that we're experiencing the world instead of experiencing ourselves, experiencing the world. Right? We really do discount the fact that there isn't a single thing that you're experiencing right now that isn't your mind's interpretation of the experience of whatever it is you are, right? Like, we know that we're not actually seeing the reality in front of us. We understand that whatever it is we're experiencing right now isn't the reality of what it is we're experiencing. We know that what we're experiencing in terms of visuals is the light reflecting off of whatever the fuck this is into our brain, and our brain going, oh, it's that, because it's the only way for it to deal with it. So we're not actually experiencing reality visually. We're experiencing our brain's interpretation of light that's bouncing off whatever the fuck we're seeing, which is why when science breaks it down, it's like, yeah, that's not solid. And we're like, well, it looks solid. And they're like, well, yeah, it would, because the light's bouncing off of it at a really high rate and everything's vibrating. So yeah, it kind of looks solid, but we don't understand that, right? Nothing is what it is perceived to be. And once you get that, then you start to realize the only thing you're ever dealing with is your panic about your own perceptions.
Yeah, it's incredible when you break it down. like that. Like when we really break it down to the basic elemental level, like we want to say that it's not just interacting with yourself, judging yourself, all of those things, but at the core of it, we're not even interacting with the thing that we think we're interacting with. We talk about the description's not the described. The described isn't even the described. Like it's not even like the tree, the idea of the tree isn't the tree, but then the tree isn't really the tree. It's just reality. It's just light reflecting off of it, just energy vibrating. That's all it is. So it's even further down that. And yet we're, running back layer upon layer, thinking our idea of it is it. And it's like the it that is beyond the idea isn't even it. Like, holy fuck, we've settled upon a lot of assumptions. It's so interesting. Like, and it's right there. Like, science has recognized this, talking about it. Like, oh yeah, it's all the same shit. It's all the same shit. And we just don't want to believe it. It reminds me of Planet of the Apes that I just watched recently. That it's just that. It's just the la 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 la. I don't want to listen. No, I have this idea of me, and it makes me feel comfortable. And letting go of that, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't care if it's freedom. I don't care. It's just uncomfortable. I'm not going to listen to anything that you say. I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to maintain this prison. And who are you to say that I can't maintain this? Like, you can. You absolutely can. But as Ray said before, there's both a perceived benefit that you're holding on to, but simultaneously always going to be a cost. And we don't want to look at the cost because we're just looking at the benefit, thinking that's the best we can do.
It's really funny because it's true. Science kind of picked this up a long time ago, right? Like science has, but scientists can't. And why? It's like, I've made a discovery that this is all one thing. We're all one. Who made the discovery? I did. It's like, aha, I understand why you can't see we're all one. And we have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to pass it over to Amanda.
I was thinking about when you guys had talked about how we have an addiction to the self, and then there's also another addiction to pursuing certainty. And I think it's based on this assumption that I think I'll feel better if I know everything. And it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, that's basically where all that's driving this endless pursuit of like, but if I know, we'll feel better. It's a pure assumption that we would feel better if we knew everything. If we achieve certainty, we're going to feel better, obviously, because it's in the uncertainty that I feel uncomfortable. It's not taking into consideration that you don't have to feel uncomfortable in uncertainty, that it's not required to know to feel uncomfortable. Like it just blows my mind that like I haven't thought about it until like just right now, that I've assumed knowing will make me feel better. And that's why I keep trying to put things in a box and trying to define things in this endless pursuit of trying to understand and know. But I can't know. It's just that uncertainty is never going to go away. And the one of the great or one of the powerful realizations is that I just don't need to know. And that was the biggest insight that I had from the first retreat, is that I just don't need to know, and that is totally okay. And that has just given me space for growth. Not space for knowledge, but space for growth.
Absolutely. Because what is the cost of needing certainty? Always needing certainty. That's what it ends up being, right? And all of a sudden, uncertainty becomes a bigger and bigger threat. It's obvious when you look at it, when you really just recognize, like, oh, wait a minute, life is uncertain. That's pretty much it. That is the all of everything we're dealing with. Life is fucking uncertain. You don't know what's coming. You don't know what you're capable of. You don't know what anybody down the street's going to do. You don't know what tomorrow brings. You don't even know there is a tomorrow. You don't understand time. You don't understand space. You don't understand matter. You don't understand gravity. You don't understand light. You don't understand fucking anything. Continue on. And that's it. And immediately we're like, can I do that? You didn't even have to ask.
Jazz, we got about 1 minute. If you want to wrap us up here quick.
Yeah, that was what Amanda said. It's been hitting me so hard lately because I've been finding it from a different perception of how the need to know is coming from how it would define me and how it would bring me up. And so lately I've been finding that because I don't need to maintain any perception of me, that I don't need to know, have an answer. And so sometimes I find myself lately giving an answer when I don't know the answer. And so I just realized how I can just say I don't know, and how I've been telling myself that as well, I don't know, and how so often I'll have these thoughts and ideas about what I should be doing and stuff like that, and I'll just say I don't know. And so many insights will start pouring in right after, like a minute or two after. And like, not just I don't know so I can know, but I don't know, and that's okay. And that's okay. And I've just been relishing whatever happens after, or that experience of feeling like I cannot know and that it's okay.
Yeah, it's the reality. Why avoid the reality? Look how much pressure goes with that. You know, I love the fact that I don't know. And it took me a while to get good with that, because immediately you're like, oh God, I have less value. It's like, no, that's how you learn. That's actually how you open up your mind and take in more shit, is to recognize, like, I don't know. And even if you do know, you don't know. You don't know everything. That's the whole point. So it means like, oh, I know, which is just like, I'm scared to learn, you know, and that's really all it is. And so I don't know is the most freeing fucking thing I've ever experienced in my life. Right. So I appreciate this conversation. God, I love these roundtables. We're going to continue on Patreon in about 15 minutes for another hour and a half. This is a tier 2 call. We would love to see you if you can join us. Again, 7-day free trial, patreon.com/dualistic unity. Wow, so many insights. I fucking love it. I'm stoked to see both of you at the next retreat in Vancouver. Thanks for joining us today. Andrew, you want to say goodbye and we'll wrap her up?
Bye, everyone.